Hello guys and welcome back. Alex Grampion here. I hope you're well. Today we got part 2 of a full service and checks on the Yaris T Sport. So as you probably already seen the part 1, we've done all the engine bay stuff and the initial checks already. And today what we're going to be doing is tyres, brakes, suspension and also checks under the car for the common issues. A lot of them do suffer with rust. Luckily on this one it's quite clean, but I'm still going to show you the common areas where you can get problems and etc. And also in my case I have got a couple of issues with the brakes. When I'm braking, although the brakes are all feeling free, but when I brake there's a clunk on the brakes, and usually that can be either seized up sliders or maybe the pad seizing up a little bit, although like I said they might be spinning freely there. So if that is something you're interested in, tune in guys, and I do advise watching the part 1 first if you haven't watched it already. Right, so let's start by having a look at obviously your suspension and steering components. So grab hold of your wheel, give it a shake side to side, and if you haven't got any play, that's good. If you have, it can be a truck rod end or it can be your steering as well, steering rack. So just give it a shake, it's feeling good. Also top and bottom, you can have a ball joint issue there if you got a knocking or if you got obviously vibration there. Or it can be a top mount as well, or something loose. So the next thing I would do is spin your wheel and feel for any vibration or noise as well when you're spinning it. That can be either brake seizing up or it can be your wheel bearing, where you'll feel the vibration in your spring. And also you'll hear the wheel bearing when you're driving the car. You'll get this loud noise. So that can be a wheel bearing, or it can be the tyre that's worn unevenly. That can cause that as well. So that's what the next step will be. Just turn the steering to the lock and spin your tyre. Have a look for any damage on it, for any cuts, if any cuts are showing cords. In the same time, have a look at the tyre on the sidewall if there's any bulges on there, or any cuts as well that's showing cords. If you got a bulge in the tyre or cut to the cord, I do advise replacing the tyre as soon as possible because it is dangerous and it will fail an MOT as well. So there's a couple of handy tools that we're going to be using today, and I'm going to put a link in the description below. This is the Draper tools that I got. So one is to measure your tyre pressures, the other one is to measure your tyre thread and the brake pads as well. You can do this without even taking the wheel, but in our case we will be taking the wheel off, and I'll show you how to use that in a bit. We're going to use 2 of them right now to check the tyre. So when checking the tyres, the first thing to check is the tyre valve as well. Check for any cracks, any damage, and also if it's leaking any air when you're moving it. So take the cap off, and we're going to be using our Draper digital pressure gauge. So just turn it on. You got all the different settings on it. So push it on there. There you go. We've got a reading of 2.25, which is spot on. I'm happy with that. Make sure you check all the other tyres the same way. So the next step will be to measure your tyre thread. And we've got a digital gauge here from Draper Tools. Like I said, the link will be in the description below. So don't forget to zero it first by pressing that button when it's on the flat surface. And then measure your tyre. Obviously you've got 3 places they can measure it. And you've got the thread wear indicator there as well. They're on 2 mil. So I can see the tyre is getting low. So just put it in the middle, press it down. And there you go. We've got 3 millimeters on the outer edge. Obviously measure all of them. That one's on 2.8. And that one's on 2.8 as well, as you can see. So at this stage I would advise looking into changing your tyre because it's time to get low. I usually change them when I get below 3 millimeters. While we're here guys, quick advice on the locking wheel nut. So you might have one of them. This is the old type for the Toyotas, and there's like 3 pins they need to put in there with your locking wheel nut. And I definitely do not recommend on doing this with your impact gun or doing it up as well, because it can snap one of them and then it will be a nightmare. You're not going to be able to get your lockable nut off of there. So do crack that off while the car is still on the floor using breaker bar or something. All the others you can do with the impact gun, that's not an issue. Right, so I removed my locking wheel nut already. So what we're going to do is use my Draper gun to get the rest of the nuts off of there. I'm going to show you how handy this gun is, how quickly it'll take your wheel off. Brilliant. Right, so with the wheel off, now we've got a perfect look at our brake hoses. You can check for any cracks, for any damage on them, so that's all good. ABS wiring they got going in there as well. Make sure there's no damage on that, although you will know because your light will be on, but just make sure it's not rubbing on anything and secured correctly. Now looking at the shock, there's slight corrosion but nothing major. Look at your spring as well, see if it's not snapped on the top or bottom. There's a little locator there, that way it should be sitting, so it's all good. The top one's not looking snapped either, so it's all good. And here obviously you can look at the discs. The discs have been replaced last year, so they're all spot on, and the brake pads are new as well. But anyway, we're going to be looking at the caliper sliders as well, make sure they'll find where the noise is coming. Also, you can have a look at all the bushes here, all the covers for your steering rack as well. Make sure it's not split because it will fail an MOT. Put it on the full lock. You can have a look at your truck or then seal that you got there. Make sure it's not leaking or split because that will fail an MOT and also cause a knock eventually. You got CV boot there as well that you can spin the discs or turn the wheel, and obviously have a look to see if it's not split or if there's no grease coming out, because if grease comes out of there, you're gonna start having issues with your CV joint and you don't want that. So looking here, this is your anti-roll bar link, and the bushes do look usually a bit cracked, but as long as there's no movement, you can get a bar under there and try and lift it up and move it around, see how much play you got there. As long as there's not too much play, you should be fine. So get the bar in there, try and lift it up, or move it to the side. Yep, that's looking good. There's not a lot of play in there. You can do it with the wheels on the floor as well. Right, so now looking at the brake pad measurements, I got the 10 millimeters there. Like I said, they have been done last year, and 10 millimeters just fits in there, which is great. You can measure at the bottom of the pad as well, just to make sure there's nice even wear on there. And obviously measure the inner pad as well. Right, to measure this pad, you got cut out there that you can see the pad. So just get it in there. Yeah, it just fits in there, so I would say it's 9 to 10 millimeters, which is fine. While we're here, guys, the other thing to measure, have a look at is your covers for the sliders. Make sure they have got no cuts in them, so the water doesn't get in there and causes it to seize up. Same on here. So just have a look at them. We'll be having more in-depth look at this as well, because like I said, I need to find out what's seizing up on my brakes. So we'll be pushing them and taking the caliper off as well to have a look at that. Make sure I find what's making the noise. So if you look here, this is where your bleeding nipple is. So it's 8 mil, and you need to make sure you spray some maintenance spray on there and tap it a little bit with the hammer before you're going to undo it to bleed your brakes. Now what I usually do, depending on how worn your pads are, you can have a look using flat blade screwdriver. You can get in there and push the caliper in by pushing it that way towards obviously the pads. Obviously in this case I haven't got a lot of movement because the pads in this are new, but when it goes in, you'll be able to move it out and in with your hand. And if it's sliding in alright on the sliders, it's all good, but you might find that one of the sliders starts going in and the other one stays seized. In that case, you will need to take the caliper off and make sure that you clean everything up and see if there's any issue with the seal or any corrosion in there already. You can get the kits for them to repair them, which are really cheap, for about 10-15 quid. I'll put that in the description below. Guys, in this stage I show you the basic stuff about the front brakes. What I'm going to do is create a video part on how to replace front disc and pads, which is going to incorporate how to fix any issues they might have here as well, with the sliders, with the caliper, or with the brake pads, or etc. How to find the noise. And I think it's going to make it easy on this video, so it doesn't turn into a very long video, boring. So I'm going to do a video part for the front disc and pads, and I'm going to do the same for the rear disc and pads and handbrake adjustment. Today I'll just give you the basic stuff, what to look for first, and obviously then you can follow the links for the next video in more in depth there, and I think this way it's going to be just a bit better for you as well. Right guys, so at the back now, obviously what you can do is shake it side to side. Obviously you haven't got steering on here. If you do, that's pretty amazing, but yeah, you shouldn't have steering on the back. Check your top and bottom as well. What you're checking is for any suspension components that are loose in there or there's an issue there. I mean, usually you don't have any knocking or any issues at the back unless there is a serious problem, or at least there's a problem with the wheel bearing as well, or your wheel is not done up properly. So give it a spin, a good old spin, get hold of the spring. No vibration in it, that's good. If there is vibration, like I said before, it can be a wheel bearing. In this case, we've got a bit of noise, but that's mainly your brakes. I think they are seizing up a little bit at the back here, and there's a little bit of corrosion there, which is fine. So we're going to be looking at that in a second. Again, have a look at the tyre for any damages, cuts. Have a look at the valve as well. Check the tyre pressures. Have a look at the wear on the tyre. This tyre is pretty good because it's quite a recent tyre. And once we take the wheel off, we're going to have a look at all the suspension components and everything else, and also have a look at the brakes and take them apart. And I'm going to show you also how to adjust your handbrake today. So at the back, guys, obviously have a look at this. This is looking actually quite good. The pad's a bit low, but it's fine. We'll have a look at that in a second. So obviously make sure it's nice and free. Here, while you're looking at the suspension, you can look at the shock absorber, make sure there's no oil leaking from there. And that applies to the front shock absorber as well. Make sure there's no oil leaks, because if there is, and it's serious, you do need replacing it, because it's not very good for your handling of the car, and it will also fail an MOT. If it's just a slight leak, obviously make sure you keep an eye on that so it doesn't get any worse. While we're here, obviously I'll take all this rubbish off of there. I'm catching it all at the bottom. Have a look at your brake hose for any damage. Have a look at any corrosion around these areas as well. This is where the Yaris usually go, but as you can see, this Yaris is pretty solid. Even behind the seals is spot on. There's no rust at all, which is sweet. Obviously have a look at your ABS wiring as well. Make sure it's nice and clean there, because obviously we live in the field. There's a lot of crap around here. So have a look at the brake pipes. No corrosion there at all, spot on. Again, more wiring at the back here, and you got spring there as well. Then you need to have a look, see if it's not snapped, see if it's sitting properly at the top there. That's looking good. And the same at the bottom there. Now again, carry on looking at the pads, measure them. They look like they're on around 4 millimeters, so it's not too bad. But I can see there's a lot of corrosion on the sliders, and I will be doing a video apart for you, like I mentioned earlier, on the rear brakes. So I'm going to be taking all of this apart and make sure that everything's sliding nice and even on there, and clean everything up so it's all good. If you want to bleed your brakes, there you go, that's the 11 mil. Sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 11 mil. To bleed them, make sure you spray a lot of maintenance spray on there, on the thread, tap it up, clean it up, and obviously undo it and bleed your brakes. Like I said, make sure you look at the shock absorber. There's bushes there, make sure they're not too destroyed in there, obviously cracked. This one's looking pretty good. Also have a look at the spring at the bottom there, where it's supposed to be locating. That's sitting perfectly in there. No snap end, which is pretty good. Same at the top there, it's all looking good. No corrosion here, so it's all looking good. Just a little bit there, but that's not too serious, to be honest. That's all good. Now in this video I want to show you obviously how to adjust. Like I said, the brakes will be video apart, but just a quick one in case your brakes are fine and you just want to adjust your handbrake a little bit. I'm going to show you how to do it without taking everything apart. So as you can see, you got a rubber bit there, like a little dust cover. You get that out of there, and that gives enough room to get a screwdriver in there and adjust your handbrake adjuster. You just need to locate it properly. When you locate it properly, which is there, just slightly off there, you'll be able to see like a little wheel in there. Now if you're looking there, you can just see the wheel inside there. That's the one that we have to turn. I'm going to show you how to do it in a second. Right, so you get a screwdriver, flat blade screwdriver in there, and you go up with it. You turn it up, and you feel they're going to go tight. Obviously at this stage, make sure obviously the handbrake is not on, so the wheel was spinning free. So at this stage it's not going to spin anymore because it's as tight as it goes. And now obviously you go the other way. 1, 2, 3. It probably releases it. Yep, it's still a bit tight. It depends how tight you want it. I'll give it a couple more clicks back. There you go, that should do it. Yeah, that's nice and free. What you do at this stage, you jump in the car and pull your handbrake up, and make sure you get about 5 to 8 clicks. I usually leave it on 5 to 6 clicks to get it perfect, but obviously don't forget to adjust the other side in the same time, because it will obviously help. But yeah, get 5 to 6 clicks on your handbrake and obviously use it afterwards to make sure that it's holding the car properly. But that is how you adjust your handbrake, guys. Once you're done, please make sure you put that back in there so dust doesn't get in there or water, and that is it. So for the checks under the car and all the suspension steering checks as well, obviously the car as high as we can get, and obviously get under there, and I'm going to show you all the points that you can check under the car to make sure it's nice and safe. And I'm also going to show you the common issues they might have on these Yarises. So in this section, starting with the exhaust, guys, make sure that your rubbers that hold the exhaust on are nice and obviously not perished, they're not coming apart. So have a look at that, give it a quick pull on the exhaust as well. You got another rubber on this side, they're looking really good on this one. Make sure your heat shield is there as well, because it's supposed to be. Obviously have a look for any leaks. This one had a little bit of leak coming out of there, obviously, as you can see there, and it's been patched up, so that's all good. I can't hear any exhaust leaks, you'll be able to hear it anyway, but it's a common area when you start leaking there. Obviously have a look at the rear frame, if there's no serious corrosion on it. Like I see, this one just got very slight surface corrosion, which is not bad at all, to be honest. This one, I'm so happy with this car. This is another general area where they do go wrong, and I'm really happy that this one is spot on here. I mean, I wouldn't say spot on, but it's looking good. There's slight surface corrosion that I'm going to treat anyway, but there's no issues at all. There's no holes in it. It's all feeling nice and solid. Usually you'll be able to poke a hole in there, or on the seal, outside seal there, under there. But it's all looking good on this side, and in the middle of the car is spot on. Now on the passenger side, exactly the same. Have a look at the shock, the brakes, hoses, and brake pipes. The spring, just like corrosion there, but the most common issue on the 1.5, especially the JDM ones, you have got an issue with the fuel pipes. Now this one, I know it looks like it's quite bad, but it's not, because there's slight surface corrosion on them, but when I tried to clean it off before, it's not actually going deep enough anyway. But some of them are actually rotten, and you can poke a hole in there when you tap it. This one is quite solid still, so that's good. If obviously your one has got a hole in it, it is dangerous and you will need to replace it. Have a look at the hoses there, the joints, obviously that's where your fuel goes into the fuel tank. Have a look at them, so there's no splits or cuts in them. And again, have a look at the seals, make sure they're nice and solid. Have a look at the handbrake cables, that they're nicely supported there, these brackets are still there. Then you got fuel return pipes there as well, and fuel feed pipes, brake pipes there as well. Have a look at that. And like I said, just have a general look at corrosion around the area. Have a look at the fuel tank. Obviously there ain't going to be corrosion in the fuel tank, but have a look at the mounts for the fuel tank on the top there. Now moving on, have a look at this, obviously support for the exhaust. That's looking good. The bushes are nice, no splits in them. Slight corrosion there, but that's not serious at all. And the best thing about this car, what I'm loving, is it's really hard to find one that is so clean. You look, there's no rust anywhere around here. It is very clean, especially for the roads in England. It's looking very good. Same on this side. It is spot on. I'm really happy with that bit of the car. I was really surprised how clean it was. The other thing you have to have a look is the power steering pipes, which is two pipes that you got here. Make sure there's no corrosion on them. Just a little bit there, but it's not serious at all. If you have a look, it's very slight there. Have a look at your bushes, the D bushes on the anti-roll bar. That you can see there. Same on this side, behind the pipes, you can see the bush there. Have a look at them, see if they're not split. Obviously have a look for any oil leaks, which this one hasn't got any, which is good. Again, common places for corrosion and rust problems are here as well on the seals, so that's all looking good. Same on this side. Now on here, obviously we already had a check, but just have a look at the anti-roll bar link. Like I said, this is actually not looking too bad. Have a look at your ball joint seal that you got there. Make sure there's no splits or grease coming out. This one's looking good, and Spasibо already had a look at, so that's all fine. So have a look at this drive shaft as well, so there's no major corrosion. Have a look at CV boot there, so it's not split anywhere, so there's no grease coming out. Also have a look at obviously any leaks from the drive shaft where it joins the gearbox. That's all looking dry, that's good. Same on this side, if you have a look, there's no leaks. The CV boot is looking good as well. This one's looking fine. Obviously on this side you got the same checks as we already done on that side. So then have a look. If your water pump is leaking, usually you will have a bit of pink color there or white color of coolant that dried off. The same goes for the radiator. Have a look at the bottom of the radiator where it joins there. So there's no white residue. So the coolant's not leaking anywhere, so that's all looking good. Like I said, the frame is looking good as well. Both sides. That's where your screen wash bottle is there. If you want to focus for some reason. Have a look, obviously, your auxiliary belt here as well. This is your aircon pump. At the bottom, oil filter here. The starter motor is here as well, nice and easy to get to. Yeah, that's all looking good. The subframe is also looking fine. Have a look at the bushes they got there. for the lower arm that you got here. Anti-roll link on this side is also looking fine. So here we are, I think we're done now. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful, guys. Like I said, for the brakes, for the front and rear, I will be doing more in-depth videos and showing you how to replace this in pads and how to fix issues, and it will be the same at the back here. How to look at the shoes as well to make sure they're fine. In most cases they are, to be honest, because they don't get worn that much anyway. Yeah, when you're adjusting the handbrake, please make sure obviously that the wheel is going to be spinning freely in the end, and you get those 5 or 6 clicks, and obviously double check that it does lock the car when you pull the handbrake on. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Obviously found it helpful. I think the Yaris looks quite clean for this mileage as well, so I'm really happy how it looks under there as well. No rust. I mean, slight corrosion, that's not really a major issue, and the car hasn't been under seal, so you can see everything there perfectly. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, do let me know, comment below, like the video, obviously subscribe to my channel, share it with your Yaris friends, and if I did miss something, which I hope I didn't, do let me know and I'll be more than happy to provide you a specific video on something else. So yeah, this is it for today. See you later. Bye.